I'm named Tyler Manning. I'm from White Earth Reservation in Minnesota.
I'm Danielle Morset. I'm from Newtown, or not Newtown, Fort Berthold, and I am studying business.
Jerica Medicine Horse, and I'm from Jordan.
I'm Samantha Goodchill. I'm enrolled in Yankton Tribe in South Dakota.
I'm Jeff McLaughlin, come from Standing Rock.
Today our topic is the drug epidemic on the reservation. Our question form is, how has the drug epidemic affected Native Americans' health?
Definitions are epidemic, a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time, affected, influenced, or touched by an external factor. Native American, a member of any of the Aboriginal of the Americas, including Indians and non-Indians, health, a person's mental or physical condition, the state of being free from illness or injury.
All right, my article was named "My Son Was Lying on the Floor." My topic is fentanyl in this. During the pandemic in 2020, Marla had just visited her son, or just invited her son and his girlfriend with their baby back to her house on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Montana, as the young couple struggled during the economic conditions. They had found jobs shortly after on the reservation, but she had noticed some strange behavior from them. She had asked about if they have been using drugs. They denied it. A few days later, Marla had awoken to screams as she ran into her son's room, finding him motionless on the floor, not breathing. He had OD'd that morning on fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 100 times more potent than morphine. He was one of 4 people to have died on the reservation of only 10,000 that week, with an additional 13 people that survived their overdose. Fentanyl has not only taken root in Montana's reservations, but affecting almost every reservation in this country. We read stories every day of traffic stops resulting in thousands of fentanyl pills being seized. Imagine what's not being caught. In the first 3 months of 2022, Montana Highway Patrol seized more than 12,000 fentanyl pills. In 2021, 103,000 people were to have died from overdosing. Of those deaths, 7 of the 10 were from synthetic opioids, mainly fentanyl. Overdose deaths disproportionately affect Native Americans. A study done at UCLA by Joe Friedman showed the death rate during the pandemic was 30% higher than any other race in the country. In Montana, the death rate was twice that of white people that were ODing. A main reason is our access to healthcare resources, IHS. According to the 2018 report, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, IHS per patient expenditures are significantly less than those of the federal health programs. We also lack treatment facilities that specialize with opioids and detox centers, sometimes taking weeks or months to even find help. Poverty, housing, and food insecurity are all things that make the community vulnerable on the ongoing fentanyl crisis. After her son's unfortunate passing, Marla is happy to see awareness finally being raised, as well as plans and resources to fight this crisis on the reservation. Hopefully this spreads to all reservations and we work together to fight this crisis.
Good.
So my article is called "How Opioids Have Been Affecting Native Americans." In a podcast transcript, Martin Michael interviewed Dr. Ron Shaw, who talks about how the opioid crisis is affecting Native Americans. He is the president of the Association of American Indian Physicians. They talked about how the death rate of Native Americans from opioid overdose was the highest of any racial demographic, according to the Centers for Disease Control. So that's 1.4 in 100,000 died from drug overdose. Dr. Shaw has studied and believes the Native American population are more vulnerable to drugs is from suffering from historical and intergenerational trauma that has been affiliated with Native American tribes. This results into also leading to the increased rates of depression, drug use, and addiction. He believes that this addiction is a biological disease, no matter what the reasoning is behind it. Dr. Shaw is determined to find out the best practice to help prevent and slow down the rate of opioid overdose in Native Americans. He is also determined to testify before Congress and the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs to try to put Native American-specific issues before legislatures. The social living conditions play a huge role into why it is easier for Native Americans to want to use drugs for recreational or experimental purposes. Drug traffickers tend to see reservations as a target because of the high rates of drug addiction, and it is easier for them to make more money by increasing their prices.
Good, thank you.
I did an article on meth. According to an online broadcast transcript published by the National Public Radio, Inc. in 2021, a new research published showed meth is causing more and more deaths in the U.S., especially in some Native American and Black communities. This drug is cheap, widely available, and increasingly contaminated with fentanyl. This broadcast transcript explains meth overdoses nearly tripled before the pandemic and then spiked again last year. The National Public Radio, Inc. stated a new study published in the journal JAMA Psychiatry finds high-risk use of meth grew in recent years. The article states one of the study's lead authors, Dr. Nora Volkow, head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, claims Native Americans and Alaska Native communities are being hit especially hard. This article claims Volkow's study found it surged in nearly every demographic and that far more women are using meth. Dr. Nora Volkow explains the difference is very significant, and this group had the greatest impact from the use of meth. The transcript states a lot of the issues are around low self-esteem, poverty, and depression. The transcript also states that the Biden administration asked for another $10.7 billion to expand drug treatment programs. The publisher explains programs from the Arapaho and the Cheyenne tribes use community mentoring and traditional tribal practices along with Western drug treatments.
Thank you.
So my topic was opioids, but the article was talking about opioids and suicide. The opioid epidemic has been getting a lot of attention, but only recently has any correlation with suicides been on reservations. Suicide and overdoses has the highest rate among the population of American Indians in the United States. The trend and data was first looked at 1999 and researched until 2017. The highest trends were located in the Middle West and West. The Cherokee Nation has been one of the first tribal nations to really address this problem and try to help find a solution. They found out that the earlier you intervene into a child's life, the higher the chance of preventing drug use and suicide. IHS started an early prevention care policy, which started in 2016, that allows for funding to go towards tribal nations to battle this monster and save their members. IHS workers are down by a quarter of the workers, so they need more people to help with providing the programs. The attention of drug abuse and suicide prevention really need to start coming to the forefront. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 was a recent effort and hopes to improve the health of Native people. Increasing funding is hard to come by, but is the first step forward.
Thank you.
I did my article on tobacco, and my article name was American Indian and Alaska Native People Experience a Health Burden from Commercial Tobacco. Tobacco is just as harmful as drugs of any kind, but not portrayed as significantly harmful. It's also much easier to get due to the lack of limitations and almost simplistic way to check tobacco's presence practically everywhere you go, as well as the effects that it has on the body's health. Consequently, tobacco is far easier to get and use, and it is not revealed to have immediate or significant effects in the short term, but far more harmful in the long term. Unfortunately, some areas where indigenous people inhabit may not have as many restrictions and rules placed on tobacco compared to areas where others not of indigenous origin live. As a direct result, smoking and tobacco use are far higher in young indigenous adults and even teenagers which leads to lung cancer and even possibly even cardiovascular disease. In the workplace, secondhand smoke exposure is highly likely to occur, even when a person does not smoke or use tobacco in any way. Apart from workplace exposure, secondhand exposure may possibly happen during culturally oriented events such as a powwow or non-culturally related events like a rodeo. And big tobacco companies themselves target indigenous communities by providing financial support to sponsor indigenous-run events. Also, the cost placed on tobacco products is lower when compared to places of high activity, bustling with people of other races. And a possible solution to that would be to make more people more aware of the damage commercial tobacco can do to the human body.
Okay, good. As far as the measurement, when we consider our data, the criteria stage, what was good data, what was interesting data, did you see some connections from article to article to article with Indian Health Service? Even though our group prior to you had a lot to say about the IHS? Yes.
I also noticed from hearing and like reading other people's, it's that the reservation like itself, like the living place of how it affects the drug use.
Okay, good point. And good to read others' information. It is. Any other surprises from you? We know recent, you had data from 1999 to 2017, I think. So it's 4 years ago. That's not so far away for a study. Then it goes back enough time. And so that was important to say that date, because if it's from 1970, that world is maybe gone because of our use of technology and the new drugs that have been introduced. Good.
I'm sorry.
No,
what
go
was
ahead.
kind of surprising to me was I found that most treatment facilities that we do have on the reservations don't have any specialization in opioids. It's something that's hard to find, even though it's a pretty big epidemic here.
So they have to ship the
Yeah,
users.
they usually get shipped out or.
Oklahoma has a facility, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. Which, it's catch-up time.
Right.
You know, what's the drug of the last 5 years? What are the top 3? And you have no treatment for it. So then you have to ship the person to where treatment's offered for that particular type of drug. We can do that in today's world with technology, but it is it's a catch-up thing. And it just takes longer, and it should be planted.
It gets really late,
Yes.
very late to the game.
And our criminal justice program, they talk about it often. Students do, they write papers, our teachers discuss it. And so I hear speeches all the time from CJ students about this is what's going on now. So it's the immediacy of the issue you have certainly brought to the table. Any questions? Yes.
I have a comment. My dad used to work for a treatment facility, but one thing that he said really helped too, like how you were talking about, like they didn't have people for opioids. He always talks about how like it would be helpful if we did, because many people, when you get shipped off somewhere else and you're a recovering addict, like it's hard for you to recover because you're in an environment that you don't know. So like getting back to our reservations would be like so much more helpful, because they're surrounded by people that they know, and like just those people constantly uplifting them. Because then you go and then you come back to people who still don't know what they're doing, so it just makes it harder for them to stay recovered.
Good point.
Okay, I have a question. What are the people of the community doing to stop the drug problem?
The people of the community.
Yeah, like, it could
That-
be the people of the community or like the police department.
Well, police, as far as they can do, is basically just pick it up on patrols, like traffic stops and stuff. That's all they can really do, and lock down on that. But on the reservation, you know, I don't know if there's any really special programs that are trying to crack down on fentanyl. It's, like you said, it's kind of like a wildfire right now. All we're trying to do is treat the people that are suffering from it.
Yeah.
Really not a solution to stopping it right now, so.
Like, I know for our reservation in Newtown, the IHS, the pharmacy, gives out Narcan. And all the police officers are getting trained for Narcan.
Right, like a
At the
way to try to
IHS,
help
they
them.
hold trainings for the community for Narcan. You know, they're trying to get Narcan out there to,
Yeah,
yeah.
to try to save the people that are already
Right.
like suffering from it. So as far as trying to stop it, I really don't know what's being done to
Yeah, well,
stop fentanyl in particular.
I kind of just asked because on my reservation, like last week or 2 weeks ago, they had 4 different drug busts.
Mhm.
So and then they put them away. too.
That's, so yeah, basically law enforcement just trying to crack down as hard as they can on it.
Yeah.
Really what you're seeing right now.
I think that having like harder sentences is something that needs to happen because you could deal drugs and you'll get out within a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say for our reservation, we don't have laws in our thing about like meth or fentanyl or anything like that. So when somebody does get caught with that, they can't really, especially if it's on reservation land, they can't charge them with anything.
Mhm.
Like the police can take it and they can collect it, but you cannot like charge them in court because there's nothing in our laws that are like required, and that's how a lot of reservations are.
Mhm. Like she said, we're in a race right now and we're kind of behind in the race. Trying to catch up is really what we're doing.
Good points. Thank you.
That was the one side.